You check your phone and your stomach drops. Someone didn't respond to your text, but they were active. They posted something, and now your mind is spinning. It's been 3 hours. What did you say wrong? Did you come on too strong? Are they mad at you? And now that anxiety is spreading, you can't focus on anything else. The more you care about getting that response, the more it hurts. And now you're refreshing the app every few minutes, checking if they've read it yet, replaying every word of your last conversation. Here's the question that changes everything. What if the thing destroying your peace isn't the situation itself, but how tightly you're gripping it? According to research by psychologist Baljinder Sahdra at the University of Newcastle, individuals who score higher on measures of non-attachment report significantly lower levels of anxiety and depression. They're not less engaged with life, they're just not drowning in the outcomes. This shows up everywhere in your daily existence. You obsess over a work presentation and can't sleep for days. You check your bank account 16 times in one afternoon. You replay a conversation from 3 weeks ago, dissecting every pause, every facial expression, convinced you said the wrong thing. The truth is, your suffering isn't coming from the events themselves. It's coming from how desperately you're clinging to specific outcomes. And once you understand that your mind creates most of your pain by gripping too tightly to things it can't control, everything shifts. This isn't your fault. You've never been taught how to engage fully with life while loosening your psychological grip on how things must turn out. In this video, we'll explore why your brain turns you into an emotional hostage and how to break free. But here's what you need to know. You can reclaim your peace without becoming indifferent or detached. Here's how we're going to do that. First, I'll reveal the 5 hidden ways overinvestment hijacks your nervous system in everyday situations, even while you're sitting in traffic or scrolling social media. These patterns are so subtle that even therapists miss them. Then we'll explore the surprising neuroscience behind why caring too much actually makes you less effective and more anxious. You'll understand what's really happening in your brain when you spiral. But most importantly, I'll give you 7 practical, research-backed strategies you can start using today to care deeply without being controlled by outcomes. These aren't vague tips about letting go. These are specific techniques that work even when you're in the middle of an anxiety storm. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to notice when you're gripping too tightly, you'll understand why your brain does this, and you'll have concrete tools to find peace while still giving your all. Think of your mind like a hand trying to hold water. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. The looser your grip, the more water you can actually carry. That paradox lives in your brain every single day. You chase certainty and control, and the pursuit itself creates the chaos you're trying to escape. But how do we know this isn't just philosophy? In the past 40 years, researchers discovered something that changes everything about how we understand peace and suffering. In the early 2000s, psychologist Steven Hayes at the University of Nevada developed what's now called acceptance and commitment therapy. He discovered that psychological inflexibility is at the root of most emotional suffering. When we rigidly demand that reality match our expectations, we create our own prison. Hayes found that people who learn to hold their thoughts and feelings more lightly experience dramatic reductions in anxiety and depression. This wasn't about positive thinking or suppression. It was about changing your relationship to internal experience. Around the same time, researchers Baljinder Sahdra and Philip Shaver created the first scientific measure of Buddhist non-attachment. Their studies revealed something profound. Non-attachment isn't about caring less. It's about releasing rigid fixation on how things must be. People scoring high on non-attachment showed greater life satisfaction, better emotional regulation, and stronger relationships. The paradox is they were more engaged with life, not less. More recently, Psychiatrist Judson Brewer at Brown University's Mindfulness Center studied what happens in the brains of people trapped in cycles of craving and worry. Using brain imaging, he discovered that meditation reduces activity in the default mode network, the brain regions responsible for self-referential thinking and obsessive mental loops. When you stop gripping so tightly to outcomes, these regions quiet down naturally. Together, these insights reveal something profound. Your peace doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from loosening your psychological grip on needing things to be different than they are. Your brain is creating suffering by demanding certainty in an uncertain world. This is what you've been experiencing. You can see this in your own life right now. Every time you check that text message, every time you refresh your email, every time anxiety floods your system because reality isn't matching the story you've written in your mind. This is your threat detection system working overtime. You felt this when you wake up at 3 a.m., heart racing, replaying something you said at dinner. Your brain has labelled uncertainty as danger, so every unanswered question feels like a threat. You're not anxious because you care. You're anxious because you're demanding a specific outcome from a situation you can't control. Then there's the mental time travel pattern. Here's how it shows up in your life. You're physically sitting at your desk, but mentally you're living in next week's presentation disaster that hasn't happened yet. Or you're reliving last month's argument, rewriting every sentence you wish you'd said. Your body is here. Your mind is everywhere else. This isn't multitasking. It's fracturing. You're trying to control past and future while abandoning the only moment you actually have power in. But overinvestment feeds into something even more subtle, the illusion of control through overthinking. You believe that if you just analyze the situation one more time, replay that conversation enough times, check that status enough rounds, you'll finally have certainty. Think of it like trying to steer a car by gripping the steering wheel tighter while the engine's off. More effort, zero movement. Your mind mistakes mental activity for actual control, so you stay stuck in loops that create anxiety without producing solutions. And here's the pattern most people never notice. The worth attachment trap. You've unconsciously linked your value as a human to specific outcomes. If they respond, you're lovable. If they don't, you're worthless. If the presentation goes well, you're competent. If it doesn't, you're a failure. You're not just invested in outcomes. You've made outcomes the measure of your existence. This is why rejection feels like annihilation and criticism feels like death. You've tied your identity to variables you can't control. Perhaps the most deceptive part is the suffering about suffering spiral. You're anxious about a situation, then you become anxious about being anxious. Psychiatrist Judson Brewer calls this the second arrow. The first arrow is the painful event. The second arrow is your judgment about having that pain. I shouldn't feel this way. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just let it go? Now you're suffering twice. Once from the situation, once from beating yourself up about your reaction to the situation. This isn't your fault. You're not broken for experiencing this. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. But why does your mind work this way? Because survival in the ancestral environment required constant vigilance and threat detection. Your ancestors who stayed relaxed when a predator might be nearby didn't become your ancestors. The ones who worried obsessively, who catastrophized, who never felt safe. Those are the ones who survived long enough to pass on their genes. You inherited an anxiety-prone brain because relaxed brains died out millions of years ago. Why does overinvestment happen? Because evolution gave you a prediction machine, not a peace machine. Your brain's primary job is to predict threats and prepare responses. It compares present reality to stored patterns. When reality doesn't match your brain's predictions, it interprets that mismatch as danger. This is why uncertainty feels so unbearable. Your threat detection system evolved to treat "I don't know" as "you might die." But there's more happening beneath the surface. The default mode network is your brain's storytelling system. When you're not focused on a task, these regions activate and start narrating your life. They don't like me. I'm going to fail. Nothing ever works out. Judson Brewer at Brown University explains that this network is responsible for self-referential thinking. The constant mental chatter about yourself, your past, your future, your worth. Think of it like having a radio station broadcasting your fears on repeat. You can't turn it off. But meditation teaches you to stop believing every story it tells. Then, there's what culture did to this already hypervigilant system. Modern society rewards outcomes over processes. You're judged by results, not by how well you tried. Social media turns life into a performance. Every post is curated. Every photo is filtered. You've learned to measure your worth by metrics you can't control. Likes, responses, promotions, approval. Your ancient survival brain now believes your social worth determines your literal survival. So rejection doesn't just hurt, it feels like death. The philosopher Epictetus said 2,000 years ago, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." He didn't have brain scanners, but he understood that your mind creates more suffering than reality ever could. He knew that freedom comes not from controlling external events, but from releasing the demand that they must happen your way. Together, these mechanisms create a painful truth. You're locked in a battle with reality itself. Every time you demand that life be different than it is, you create suffering. Every time you try to control what can't be controlled, you generate anxiety. No wonder you're exhausted. You're fighting a war you cannot win. But here's what changes everything. The moment you see that the grip itself is the problem, not the situation you're gripping, you find the exit door. This is what you've been up against. Your brain trying to survive in a modern world using ancient software. But the moment you realize this, something shifts. You start to see that peace doesn't come from finally controlling everything. It comes from releasing the demand that you must. Freedom begins not when everything goes your way, but when you stop needing it to. This takes practice. Your brain has been running this program for years, but you can start retraining it today. Here's how. Start with the simplest practice that rewires everything. The next time you notice anxiety rising, pause and ask yourself one question. Can I control this outcome right now? Not, can I influence it? Can I control it? If the answer is no, you're trying to steer a car with no engine. Your job isn't to solve the problem in this moment. Your job is to notice your gripping and consciously loosen your hold. Here's what to do. Take 3 slow breaths. On each exhale, imagine releasing your grip just 10%. You don't have to let go completely. Just ease the stranglehold slightly. You'll notice that your anxiety was coming from the grip itself, not from the situation. Research by Steven Hayes at the University of Nevada shows that this simple act of psychological flexibility reduces the dominance of distress over your behavior. When you practice this, you're literally teaching your brain that it can hold experiences without being controlled by them. Once you've tried that, here's what to add next. Practice catching the catastrophe script before it runs. Your brain writes disaster movies automatically. They didn't text back. They hate me. I'm alone forever. That's not reality. That's one possible story among thousands. The moment you notice the catastrophe script starting, interrupt it with this phrase. That's one story. What are 5 other explanations? Force your brain to generate alternatives. They're busy. They fell asleep. They're thinking about their response. You're not trying to believe the positive stories. You're just loosening the grip on the negative one. Try this right now. Think of something you're anxious about. Notice the catastrophe story your brain is telling. Now list 3 other possible explanations. You'll feel the grip loosen immediately. Now you can deepen this by learning to distinguish between real problems and mental problems. A real problem has a solution you can implement right now. A mental problem is hypothetical suffering about something that might happen. If you can do something actionable right now, do it. If you can't, it's a mental problem, which means it's optional suffering. Your mind is trying to solve uncertainty by creating scenarios. That never works. When you catch yourself in a mental problem, label it. This is my brain catastrophizing, not reality requiring action. When you practice this, you stop wasting energy on imaginary problems and start directing it toward actual solutions. Here's a technique that works even in the hardest moments. When you're in the grip of outcome obsession, use the 10-10-10 framework. Ask yourself, will this matter in 10 minutes? 10 months? 10 years? Most of what consumes you today won't exist in your memory a year from now. This isn't about minimizing real pain. It's about putting your current suffering in perspective. That text message that's eating you alive right now probably won't matter next week. The presentation you're obsessing over won't define your life in a decade. This practice gives you distance from the grip without forcing you to let go before you're ready. Another powerful practice is training the observer self. That quiet presence that notices thoughts without being consumed by them. Right now, you are aware that you're reading these words. Something in you is watching your experience unfold. That awareness is always there, like the sky behind the clouds. Your thoughts are the weather. Your awareness is the vast space in which they appear. When you rest in that observer self, outcomes lose their power because you're no longer exclusively identified with the part of you that needs things to go a certain way. Start practicing by setting a timer for 2 minutes. Sit quietly and just notice thoughts appearing and disappearing. Don't judge them, don't fix them. Just watch. You're strengthening the part of you that can hold experience without gripping it. When you practice this, you begin to recognize yourself as the observer self, that quiet presence that watches thoughts arise and pass. Research by Judson Brewer shows that this state of awareness actually reduces activity in the brain regions responsible for self-referential thinking. You're not disappearing. You're recognizing you're bigger than any single thought or outcome. This one might sound strange, but research shows it works. Practice deliberately doing things badly. Choose a low-stakes activity and intentionally do it imperfectly. Send an email with a typo. Post something without editing it 17 times. Order food without researching every review. You're training your brain that imperfect outcomes are survivable. Most of your suffering comes from demanding perfection. When you practice tolerating good enough, you break the grip of needing everything to be exactly right. Here are 2 advanced practices for when you're ready to go deeper. First, the gratitude for uncertainty technique. Instead of resisting not knowing, practice saying, "I don't know how this will turn out, and that's actually okay." Uncertainty means possibility. Every time you demand to know the future, you're trying to collapse infinite possibility into one predetermined outcome. When you embrace not knowing, you open yourself to outcomes you couldn't have imagined. Second, practice the both-and perspective. You can care deeply about something and not need it to go a specific way. You can try your best and accept whatever happens. You can feel disappointed and still be okay. This isn't contradictory, this is wisdom. You're expanding your capacity to hold 2 truths simultaneously. Instead of demanding reality, choose one or the other. These practices are simple, but not easy. You'll forget. You'll grip again. You'll spiral. That's not failure. That's being human. The goal isn't to never care or never worry. The goal is to notice when you're suffering from the grip itself rather than from the situation. That awareness gives you the freedom to choose your response instead of being dragged around by every emotional wave. Realizing that you can care without controlling isn't discouraging. It's liberating, because it means your peace doesn't depend on life going your way. It depends on you releasing the demand that it must. Here's what we need to understand together. Caring less doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means engaging fully with life while loosening your psychological grip on specific outcomes, like holding water in an open palm instead of a closed fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more you lose. Your peace was never meant to depend on controlling every variable. It comes from recognizing that you can be fully alive, fully committed, fully engaged, without drowning in the results. We want to hear from you. What's the one thing you've been gripping too tightly that's stealing your peace right now? Is it a relationship, a career outcome, someone's approval? Drop it in the comments. No judgment here. We're all working on this together. And if this video helped you see your anxiety in a new light, share it with someone who's constantly refreshing their phone or replaying conversations in their mind. Because sometimes the most powerful gift you can give someone is showing them they're not broken for feeling this way. Hit subscribe if you want more content that combines psychology and neuroscience to help you actually change, not just feel better temporarily. We're here every week with research-backed insights that work in real life. Start with one practice today. Just one. Pick the one that felt most accessible. And notice what happens when you loosen your grip just 10%. You might discover that you've been carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. What if your peace was never about getting everything right? What if it was always about releasing the demand that you must? The answer to that question isn't out there in some perfect future where everything finally works out. It's here, in this moment, in your willingness to engage fully while gripping lightly. Life will keep being uncertain. People will keep being unpredictable. Outcomes will keep surprising you. But you, the observer self beneath all those storms, you remain present, aware, free.